Test. Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Live Your Best Life Now Mental Health and Relationship Seminar. We're super excited to have you. Thanks for coming. I know you guys live busy lives, but I think you're going to find yourselves very happy that you came. We are super pumped about tonight. I'm going to be giving you some more info about the seminar, about our speaker. But before we do anything else, we want to put some prizes in your hands. I think Carl's going to come up with some of the tickets that you guys got. You can pull out your tickets right now. We want to give you some stuff. So what I have here as prizes is I actually have 4 tonight, so your odds of winning are high. We do that on purpose. And so basically in the order that we draw these, you can choose what you want. Here's what I've got. I've got a $25 Visa gift card.
Nice.
In case anyone likes spending money. Anybody like spending money here? I've got this book called Health and Wellness. Simple book, has some really helpful stuff on health principles to live into. Some stuff that isn't always talked about in the mainstream as well, yet is evidence-based and very helpful. So Health and Wellness, simple secrets that will change your life is what it's called. And then we've got Dave Ramsey, The Total Money Makeover, a proven plan for your financial fitness. This is a great book on basically how to understand how to manage finances, and because that's an impactful part of our stress life, of our mental health as well. And then we also have this book called Light for a Dark World. It's a simple book. It was actually, and it really talks about the battle between good and evil that's going on in our world and in our lives, why suffering happens, those kind of things. It's not going to be like a really weighty read. It's actually intended even for, even like teenagers can enjoy it. But if teens can enjoy it, it means anyone can enjoy it, right? Mm-hmm. So there's some great stuff in this simple book here. So this is what we have. And Carl, you can go ahead and come on up and let's give some stuff away tonight as we start out. So here, I'll hold it. Why don't you draw?
Okay. Yeah, let's go ahead and get started.
You guys can come on in and have a seat if you're...
Yeah. Okay, our first ticket is 520-3544.
All right.
Come on up.
All right.
She was real excited.
Grab your next one here.
Okay, so while she's coming up, we're going to grab our next one.
Any of these 4, you get to choose. I guess I could have put them on the table up there.
Okay. This is 520-3547.
47.
3547.
Must be present to win. Anyone?
3547.
They're out there probably somewhere.
Draw another one.
Okay.
Draw another one.
Here's another one. 3548. 3548. Hey! Come on up. Okay.
Pick whichever one you want out of these 3.
We have 2 more prizes. Let's see here. 3534.
All right.
3534. Come on up. And then last prize.
Here, we could have put it. All right. Yeah.
3534.
Either
Pick
one,
one of
you
these
choose.
2. And then the last one is 3551. 3551. It's her. Hey, give her a round of applause.
All right, good stuff. Awesome. There you go. Well, glad you guys are able to come. We're going to be giving out more prizes over the weekend as well. We like giving you things that you can be blessed by and enjoy. This seminar is being hosted obviously free of charge because we just want to help people in the community. And many of us know people who could really benefit from this who aren't here tonight. And you might come away from tonight's experience saying, man, I wish that so-and-so was here, right? And that's your opportunity. If a name pops into your mind, that's your opportunity to reach out. Maybe it's too last minute. Maybe they already have plans, but maybe they don't. We're going to be continuing this experience tomorrow. So let me give you a little picture of what tomorrow's going to look like. Don't worry, I'm going to remind you at the end. But repetition helps with memory, right? So here's what tonight looks like is we have 2 presentations tonight. We'll have a short break in between, maybe some snacks and a chance to kind of connect, get a drink, use the restroom, stretch your legs, whatever you need to do. So we'll have a double header presentations tonight. Very good stuff. Looking forward to it. And then tomorrow we have a day of awesomeness. Okay, so here's what that looks like. At 10 a.m., we'll be right here. Okay, 10 a.m., we'll be here. You won't want to be late because we're going to be giving out more stuff at 10 a.m., okay? So come in a few minutes before 10, and so we'll be right here for another presentation, and then we will have a presentation after that, another doubleheader in the morning at 11, and so looking forward to that. Right after that, we're going to have lunch provided, and
Nice.
So you're welcome to stay for lunch. We'll have a chance to connect and meet some new friends. Community and social relationships are extremely vital for mental health. And so this is not only a seminar where we're dishing you information. You could Google some of it, but actually you can't Google a lot of what you're going to learn here. It probably won't give you the right info. But this is not just information that's going to be helpful. This is an experience. And so we want you to really be able to lean into this. So we're going to have lunch here provided, a chance to kind of hang out, and then we'll have another double header in the afternoon, 2 more powerful presentations, and then after our second presentation, it'll be around 4 o'clock-ish, we're going to do some group activities. And so we'll have some group activities in here, and then after that, we'll have a worship, a pizza dinner, and a game night and a gym night. So like any board game and card game lovers, we're going to have those going on. If you have a favorite game that you like to play, you can bring it tomorrow. And then also anyone who likes sports, we'll be playing some sports in this room. So if you like basketball or whatever other sports, so you can bring your stuff and you can plan for a whole day of awesomeness. If you have to jet out early, we still love you, and we're glad that were able to come. But we'd love to invite all of you to stay the whole day and just have a really great time. So that's coming up tomorrow, day of awesomeness. And so before we jump into tonight, I want to let you know about our speaker, Tyler Long. We're so excited to have Tyler here. He is a very popular speaker on this topic and others as well. But you have your master's in marriage and family therapy. Tyler is a very highly sought after speaker. We feel extremely encouraged to have him here in University Place. Thank you. You travel all over, especially Western Washington is kind of like your home base. Mm-hmm. But I know you do speaking engagements all over the place, nationally, and I think internationally as well. So thank you so much for being here, Tyler. Tyler speaks on a number of topics, but this is one of his specialties, is mental health, is relationships. And so I know you'll be sharing a little bit more with us about this, but we're just really excited to lean into this opportunity. Tyler has a family as well, a couple of kids. Your daughter is
15.
15, and your son is
10.
10. Awesome. So you guys live up in a couple hours north of here, right? 2 or 3 hours north. So we're super excited to have you. I'm going to go ahead and just have a word of prayer, and then I want to turn it over to you tonight. Jesus, thank you so much for this opportunity to learn more and to grow, and we just invite you to teach us what we need to hear today, that we can move forward with wellness, with vibrance, with light, and to be able to be an encouraging voice in a light in the darkness. Not only in our own lives and our own homes, but also to those around us as well. So guide us tonight. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Hey, thank you, Dustin. Boy, you really helped my mental health with that introduction there. I was like, man, hey, I came to the right place. Oh, I need a password to be able to log into the computer. Where's Carl? If you trust everybody here, you can just holler it out. If not, you got to type it in. Your computer went to sleep on me. Hey, as he does that, let me give a couple of announcements, and just come on up here, Carl, type it in there, and we'll get going. You've got 2 lesson guides on the tables. They look similar. I mean, they look identical, but at the very bottom, you'll see they have different titles. One has a number 1, and the other has a number 2. And so our first presentation, you're going to want to use number 1. You can actually fold the lesson guide in half like a booklet, and that'll make it easy. And what you're going to do as we go through the presentations is you're actually, thank you, Carl. Let's give Carl a hand, right? You're going to actually fill in the blanks if you want to get the most out of this. And then at the end of the presentation, you'll notice there are some group questions. There's a life group section. And we're going to have you actually kind of in groups to have a little bit of interaction. You can share as much or as little as you feel comfortable. And then there's actually going to be a homework assignment. Each lesson has a very practical homework assignment. Ooh, look at all these tickets. These are the ones that you guys picked tonight, aren't they? Well, I'm glad to be here with you. Let me just review real quick what Pastor Dustin shared. And that is what we have coming up. So tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., we're going to talk about emotional intelligence. This presentation right here may be the one that impacts you the most. The ABCs of understanding your emotions. And then at 11 o'clock, our presentation is going to be on marriage, how to have an emotionally healthy marriage. Let me tell you, whether you're married or single or looking to get married, hopefully you're not looking to be single, right? If that is the case, then definitely be here. But what you'll learn, because you may say, but I was married, I'm not going down that road again, but trust me, you want to hear this stuff because you may be able to share some wisdom with somebody that you know. And then there's going to be a lunch, and then after lunch, now notice the time, it says 2 p.m. That time is not set in stone. Now, we don't want to rush you guys in eating, but at the same time, if people are done and you're mingling and it's like, hey man, it's 1:40, we're not just going to sit around for 20 minutes. We're going to hit this thing and we're going to get going. And then at 3 o'clock, learning to forgive and let go. Now, these presentations are actually 5 presentations from a 10-part series that I normally give. But in this case, we are only going to be going through 5 of the presentations. So I hope you have your lesson guides there. Hope you've got a pen. Now, our presentation right after this one, I should mention this, is going to be on how to make... Wait a minute, this is the wrong presentation is up. Something happened here. We need the presentation number 1. Somehow number 2 is up. They snuck that in there. We want presentation number 1. Can I advance the slides? Let me see here. A bunch of... Oh, no, that's not the right one. That's the pre-service loop. Oh, there. No, that's not it either. It should say number 1, and it... Yeah, that's not it right there. Well, hey, as they get number 1 up, let me tell you a little bit. Oh, there we go. Nope, that's not it. I thought it changed. This is a practicing exercise for your presenters' mental health. Well, let me tell you a little bit about myself here. Do they get it? Because I don't want to jump. There we go. How to start. Let me get going. Hey, fantastic. All right. So this seminar is called LIFE, and LIFE stands for Life Investments for Eternity. And my name is Tyler. I'll be your presenter. I have lived here in the Pacific Northwest for over half my life. Now, my wife and I have been married this summer. It'll be 24 years, and like Pastor Cern said, I've got 2 kids, but I also have a chocolate Labrador named Max. Now, I think my greatest school has been the School of Hard Knocks. Anybody else here been to the School of Hard Knocks? You learn more from bad choices you make. But I do have a master's in marriage and family therapy. I also have a master's in business, and I spent about 5 years serving in the United States Navy. So if there's any military or veterans, thank you. First responders, thank you very much for your service. We love you. We appreciate you. And I'm also an ordained pastor as well. Now, it's great to have you guys here tonight. And so get ready to go on this journey. We're going to learn. We're going to laugh. We're going to have a lot of fun. Now, a number of the sources that we're going to use are going to come from science and medical and history. We're also going to look at the Bible. So whether you're a person of faith or not, I just want you to know that we want you to be comfortable, and there's a lot that you can learn. The Bible has a lot to say when it comes to one's mental health. Now, when it comes to life, it is very easy for people to get stuck in the rut of life that many people don't take really the time needed to improve and work on the major areas of their life. You know, one of my consuming passions is for people to live the best life they possibly can and have a closer connection with God. You know, as we begin, there's something that you need to know. When you choose to improve the major areas of your life, there's a chance you may begin to feel a bit overwhelmed. Anytime you try to make major changes, there's a chance you may end up kind of like hitting a wall, and you may have all these different emotions, and sometimes it can be frustration, sometimes it can be anger, and the emotions you feel may begin to cause you to feel like you're doubting yourself, like maybe you can't really make these changes in your life. But I want to remind you of something, and it's this. If these things were easy, if it was easy to change the major areas of your life, if it was easy, then guess what? Everybody would do it, right? But the principles we're going to learn are easy to understand, but applying them to your life can actually be a little bit more challenging. You see, you need to get to that point in your life where you have a never again moment. I mean, have you ever had that? Have you ever had that moment in your life where you just say, I've had it? Has that ever happened to you before in life? Just that never again moment. You see, what happens to most people is people will not make changes unless the pain of staying where you are is greater than the pain of making a change. It's only when the pain of staying where you are is greater than the pain of making that change that people actually want to move forward and make positive changes in their life. Now, never forget what I'm about to share with you. If you want to make changes, if you want to improve any area of your life, you have to understand your why, your reason for making the changes. You see, if you understand your why, you can then withstand any how. So you've got to have your why. You've got to have that thing inside of you, and it's going to be different for different people, but you've got to have that thing inside of you that just motivates and compels you to make changes. Now, in my life, I know my why. My why are my two kids, my daughter Bella and my son Nate. They're the reason why I want to change my family tree. You see, I grew up in a broken home. My parents divorced. My mom was going to leave my dad, but then she found out she was pregnant with me, decided to stay. I was born 6 months later. She left my dad. And so I grew up in a home that there was dysfunction. I grew up in a home where there was mental and physical abuse. I grew up in a home where there was sexual abuse. I grew up in a home where there was anger and there was alcoholism. Now, my wife, on the other hand, my wife and my kids are both enrolled in the Swinomish tribe. So I married a lady. She's Native American. She's Swinomish. Anybody here Native? Nobody here is Native. That's all right. We love you anyways. And so my wife grew up in a home on a reservation where there was drugs and there was alcohol. So we both grew up in homes that had these challenges, and we decided early on in our marriage that we wanted to change our family tree. That we decided that we wanted to be the last ones, at least in our branch of the family tree, that would experience this type of trauma. Because trauma is generational, we wanted to end this type of dysfunction. So I tell you what, by God's grace, my two kids, Nate, who's 10, Bella, who's 15, my two kids are the first two kids on my side of the family. That includes my siblings, my step-siblings, my half-siblings, all of my cousins. That also, we're talking about my wife's side of the family, her siblings, her cousins. My two kids are the first two kids to grow up in a home where there's no drugs, where there's no alcohol, where there's no physical abuse, there's no emotional abuse, there's no sexual abuse going on. I mentioned no drugs, no alcohol. Both parents are together. We've been married going on 24 years. We both finished college. We both are enjoying life. And so what I'm going to share with you in this seminar is a journey that my wife and I have been on. And so I want you, wherever you're at, to get to that point where you understand your why. And I don't know what your past has been. And keep in mind, your past does not define who you are. All right? It refines you, certainly, but it does not define you. You don't have to let your past define you, but instead you can make a choice, a cognitive decision that you're going to change your family tree. That your kids or your grandkids are going to have it different than you did. You have the power to do that. Now I'm getting a message here again. Let me see if I can... I did something here. That was not good. Let me see if I can close it out here. You better just stay pretty close up here, Carl. No offense to Mac users, but I'm using a Mac computer. I'm a PC guy, all right? And so I'm using someone else's Mac computer. Sorry, Carl. And I don't want to switch. No, maybe I do want to switch devices. Oh, I'm seeing, oh, there we go. What's going on? There we go. Wow, look at that. Is it back? Oh, there we go. I think we're good to go. All right. Hey, thanks, guys. Thanks, Carl. We'll keep going here. One of my favorite quotes is this one right here from an unknown author. It says, "One day your life will flash before your eyes. Make sure it's worth watching." So let me ask you some questions here. How many of you want to experience a happier, more fulfilling life? Do you want that? I think all of us do, right? Do you want to discover what it is that you were born to do? Do you want to live your life with intentionality and purpose? Do you want to have better relationships? Harvard University did a study. It is the longest study. It's been over 80 years. The longest, most in-depth study ever done was done by Harvard University on how to have a happy life. How to live a life that has meaning. And they've been tracking these people for over 80 years. And what they discovered after spending probably millions and millions of dollars on how to live a happy life, what is the ultimate thing that creates happiness? And what they discovered was relationships, community. That's what ultimately brings happiness. Of course, apart from God, they weren't doing a religious study here. How many of you want to have a healthier marriage? If you're married, I think all of us want to have a healthier marriage. Do you want to create better relationships with your kids? I mean, you certainly couldn't pick your parents, but you can choose what kind of parent you're going to be, right? Do you want to overcome bitterness and learn to forgive? Would you like to master your personal finances? Now, I'm not including a lecture on that. I have one, but I'm not going to include it in on this series. And so here's what I want you to know. If you want to succeed at anything in life, remember your past does not matter. What matters is what are you going to do now? Because you got three choices. You can either stay where you are, you can move backwards, or you can make a decision to keep moving forward. I love this verse in the Bible. It's found in Philippians, and the Apostle Paul says, he says, "Brother, I do not consider that I have made it my own, but one thing I do notice." He says, "Forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead," right? And so your past does not define you, it refines you. Have you ever had somebody close to you in your life who could speak openly and honestly and tell you, in a kind way that you could do better. For example, if you're married, you can do better. Now, not like a better spouse, but I mean like you could do better in your marriage, right? I mean, if you're a parent, we can always, as parents, do a better job when it comes to parenting. Now, I'm sure all of us can do a better job when it comes to our personal finances, but what about your health and what about your relationships? What I've discovered in doing counseling is every single person I meet, everybody in here, including myself, we all have at least one area of our life that is completely messed up. Did you know that? It's easy to come to church. I don't know what church you all go to, but it's easy to go to church, look around, and you think that everybody there has it all together. But notice and remember, the cover does not tell the full story, all right? Everybody you encounter, including this guy right here, we all have at least one area of our life that is messed up. And so during this short series of presentations tonight and tomorrow, we're going to talk about how to control our emotions and how to stop procrastinating and how to avoid self-defeating behaviors. You know, one of the most powerful aspects, if you want to change your life, is you have to incorporate the spiritual as well as the need for community. And that's why Pastor Stearns here of LifeBridge is not only helped organize this with Carl, but that's why tomorrow night there's going to be food and game, because community and relationships is really where it's at. Now, what you learn each night, when applied, will bless the different areas of your life. Because I've been on this marriage relationship journey for my whole life, but really the last 20 years. And I'm not perfect, and even the principles I teach, I'm not perfect at applying them to my own life, but they're easy to understand. It's just a matter of, are we going to apply them? Are we actually going to do them? In fact, the Bible tells us here in the book of Proverbs, it says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." You are going to be hearing some instructions tonight and tomorrow, and it's ultimately up to you if you want to apply what you hear to your life. Now, all of us here tonight, we are all the result of our upbringing combined with decisions that you've made. You are who you are as a result of your upbringing and the decisions that you made. Now, you can blame your parents if you want to. You can blame the government, right? You can blame the president or a former president. I mean, you can blame anybody you want. You can blame your family. You can say, I grew up in a crazy family. And you realize that every family has crazy in it. Did you know that? Every family has crazy. And if you don't think your family has crazy, then guess what? It's you, right? It's you, absolutely. And you know what? There is a clear connection with the amount of personal responsibility that we accept and how much you succeed in life. That's very important. Now, there will be points you're going to want to write down because it'll be obvious on the slides, and I'll help you fill this in. But there's other points. There's notes on the very back, or a little section for notes that you can take notes there. And that may be worth writing down, that there's a connection between personal responsibility and how much you succeed when it comes to life. You see, losers want to blame everybody for their problems, whereas winners look at themselves as the cause. You see, I've discovered in my own life that when I stop blaming everybody else for my problems, literally like 90% of my problems seem to go away. Now, most people want to experience success in the major areas of life. We want to have good relationships. We want to be healthy, both spiritually, physically, mentally, and emotionally. But what I've discovered is those who are successful in these areas is that success actually leaves clues. Keep that in mind. Success leaves clues. And so notice here on the first page of your lesson guide, on the very first page, make sure it says number 1 at the very bottom and not number 2. But on the first page, successful people do the following. You're going to want to fill this in now. You ready? Notice up on the screen it's going to be highlighted. Successful people, what do? They live their life with purpose and they have definite goals. They live their life with purpose and they have definite goals. Number 2, what do successful people do? They manage time well and they're not afraid to take calculated risks. They manage their time. Successful people aren't watching hours and hours of The Bachelor. All right? They don't. Successful people don't spend hours and hours on social media unless they are an influencer and that's their job. Successful people, what do? They learn from their mistakes and they take personal responsibility. Now, I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek about The Bachelor, but if all of your friends are all on the same page over who got kicked off the island last week, you may be running with the wrong group. You want to run with people who are going to be mentally strong and build you up. Number 4, what do successful people do? They have a positive mental attitude and they take care of their health. So number 4, they have a positive mental attitude and they take care of their health. And number 5, instead of watching The Bachelor, if I can mention that again, they expand their knowledge by what? Reading and engaging with others. They are lifelong learners. They're constantly working to try to improve the major areas of their life. And here's an important one, number 6. Number 6, they are willing to follow best practices and they're always willing to learn. Now, I'll get into best practices here in just a moment, but the number 7 is an important one. They have strength and character based on their belief in God. They have strength and character based on their belief in God. Now, here's something you may want to write down in addition. It's not on your notes, but you may want to write this down. I'm going to say it twice. Successful people do consistently what other people only do occasionally. Did you catch that? Successful people do consistently what other people do occasionally. You see, when you see somebody that is winning in an area of their life, when you see somebody, you say, man, that couple, they've got a great marriage. Guess what they've been doing consistently? Working on their marriage. When you see somebody and they look like they're in shape and they're fit, guess what? They're not going to the gym occasionally. What are they doing? They're going to the gym consistently. When you see someone who is mentally and emotionally and spiritually strong, you see somebody who is consistently making that area of their life a priority over a long period of time. In fact, there's a psychologist by the name of Angela Duckworth. Angela Duckworth, and she did a study on people who succeed. She wanted to find out, why do some people succeed at things and others don't? And in this study, she discovered something very, very interesting. One of the characteristics that emerged as a significant predictor of success, and it wasn't the person's social intelligence, it wasn't how good looking they are, it wasn't their physical health, it wasn't even their IQ. In her study, she discovered the number one predictor of why some people are successful is one little 4-letter word, and it's that word grit. You may want to write that word down. It's that word grit. Grit is the greatest predictor of success in any walk of life. And it has something to do, just with this unremitting tenacity. Effort, she discovered, counts twice as much as talent. Effort is twice as important as talent. In fact, she wrote an entire book about it. It's called Grit. You can check it out at your library. But she discovered that passion and perseverance over the long haul is how she defined grit. In fact, she goes on, she defines grit as the unremitting long-term tenacity. It's this steely determination. It's a willingness to use every last drop of human effort to move something and to keep moving that forward until you get across the finish line. See, here's the incredible thing. In this study, she studied like West Point cadets. She studied these kids that are involved in the National Spelling Bee. And by studying the level of grit in their life, she was able to predict which one of the cadets or students would go the longest. They've actually also done this study on those who go into the military, like special forces, like Navy SEALs. It's the ones that have grit, that have that mentality that they never want to give up. So do you want to find out how much grit you have tonight? I'm going to take you through 10 quick questions. And as I read the questions, you've got to write down a number next to the answer that most corresponds with you. All right? So just find an area on your lesson guide. The questions will be up on the screen. We're going to go through this. Now, don't write down the number of the one you wish you were. All right? Be honest with yourself. Write down the one that you actually are. Now, here's the cool thing about grit. Grit can be improved. So even if you're not as gritty as you want to be, it can actually be improved, all right? So let me put these up here. So number one here, new ideas and projects sometimes distract me from previous ones. 1 is very much like me, all the way down to 5, not like me at all. So put down the one that's most like you. I'm going to go through these rather quickly. So the first one that pops up, that's the number you want to write down, all right? Number 2, now you'll notice the numbers are now reversed. Setbacks don't discourage me. I don't give up easily. Number 5, very much like me. Number 1, not like me at all. So write down that number. We're going to go through 10 questions. Question number 3, I often set a goal but later choose to pursue a different one. Number 1 is very much like you. Number 5, not like me at all. And then, of course, everything in between. You don't got to just mark 1 or a 5. You can mark a 2 or a 3, but I'm just hitting the bookends there. Number 4, now keep in mind it's reversed. I am a hard worker. Number 5, very much like me, all the way down to 1, not like me at all. And again, don't mark what you want to be, mark down what you are, all right? I mean, if you mark down what you want to be, that's like having 1 foot on the scale and 1 foot on the bathroom floor and say, look at that, man, I've lost like, however much weight you've lost. It's not reality. You got to define reality. Number 5, I have difficulty maintaining my focus on projects that take more than a few months to complete. Number 1, very much like me. Number 5, not like me at all. And everything in between. Number 6, I finish whatever I begin. Number 5, very much like you, then all the way down to 1, not like me at all, and everything in between. I finish whatever I begin. Number 7, we're almost there, guys, almost done. Number 7, my interests change from year to year. Is that very much like you, or number 5, not like me at all? Your interests change from year to year. Number 8, I am diligent, I never give up. Number 5 is very much like you, and number 1, not like you at all. And everything in between, you never give up. You're very diligent. Number 9, I've been obsessed with a certain idea or project for a short time, but later lost interest. Is that like you? Number 1, or not like you at all? Number 5. And then finally, number 10, I have overcome setbacks to conquer an important challenge. Number 5, very much like me. Number 1, not like me at all. Then you want to add up all 10 numbers. If you have a number more than 50, you did something wrong. But add up the numbers real quick. And then you should have a 2-digit number there. And then put a decimal point right in the very middle. So if you have like a 37, you would have 3.7. If you have a 40, you'd have a 4.0. If you have a 20, it'd be a 2.0, and I'm going to show you where you're at on the percentile of the grit scale. And so, of course, anything 4.5 and higher, meaning your score added up to 45, you're in the 90 percentile. And, of course, you can figure out, and I don't know, maybe later tonight you can compare your grit scores and have some grit arguments, right? No, not really. But here's the cool thing. Grit can be developed. But the way you develop grit is not living a life of ease. Ease is the exact opposite. The way you develop grit is you got to go through challenges. You got to go through those valleys in life. You know, you think of people like Oprah Winfrey and others and how successful they become, and you look at where they came from, right? And you realize that over the course of their life, those challenges, those what appear to be setbacks, actually were grit developers. Let me illustrate this to you. Remember that book when you were a kid, The Little Engine That Could? Remember that story, how there was this engine that wanted to bring toys over the mountain because there were kids on the other side of the mountain and they didn't have any toys, and so the engine goes and asks all these really big, strong engines, "Can you help me get the toys?" And they said, "No, we can't help you." So he went and he asked the little engine. And the little engine said, "I can do that. I can help bring those toys over the mountain to the boys and girls that have no toys." And remember that little engine as he huffed and puffed? As he went up that mountain, what did he say? You know the story, right? "I think I can, I think I can." And then remember what happened when he came down the other side. What did he say? He said, I thought I could, right? I thought I could. I thought I could. I knew I can. Because he developed that grit. And so it's that idea, that steely determination where you say to yourself, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, and you're not willing to give up. That's how you develop grit. That's how you develop grit. Let me tell you a quick story. My daughter, we have a 5-year-old chocolate lab. When we got him as a puppy, one thing I discovered about Labradors is they eat anything and everything. And so it was the holidays, it was like Halloween, and we had these pumpkins on our front porch. They weren't carved, but we had these pumpkins. I mean, they were like the size of basketballs. One day the pumpkins were gone. Can you imagine that, Pastor Dustin? They were gone. All that was left was the very top. You know, the thing you used when you carve them? That's all that was left. And it turned out our dog had eaten the pumpkins. And I was like really nervous, what's going to happen? So I called the vet, and the vet said, "Oh no, pumpkins are really good for the digestive system of animals." So all over my backyard for the next couple of days. And my daughter at the time was like 10 years old. And I said, "Bella, it's your dog." And man, she cried. She gagged. "It smells so bad. I don't want to do it, Dad." I said, "Hey, it's your dog. Get out there, man." I thought I was being mean, but I was helping my daughter develop grit. And I tell you, one of these days, I believe my daughter's going to rise up and she's going to call me blessed for doing that. Well, that day hasn't come yet. And I don't see it on the horizon. But let's get back to our lesson here. So let's talk now about some of the things that unsuccessful people do. You ready? Unsuccessful people, this is on the back or the middle page there, they allow their environment and circumstances to control them, right? They don't have grit. They're controlled by their circumstances. Number 2 is they have no goals and no purpose. Unsuccessful people have no goals and no purpose. And we're going to build on these themes later tonight and tomorrow. Number 3, here's an important one. Rather than take personal responsibility, what do? They blame other people. It's all my problems is everybody else's fault. It's not my fault, it's everybody else. Number 4, they form their ideas from TV or gossip. Right? Number 5, they lack motivation, only doing enough to get by. You ever work with somebody like this? Maybe you currently work with someone like this. They only do enough to get by, right? If you want to develop grit, you know what you do? You go into work early, you stay late, you tell your boss, "Are there any projects, anything I can do above and beyond?" You over-deliver. That's how you develop grit. Number 6, they never put forth any effort to improve their situation. And number 7, they know it all no matter what the facts tell them. You've met someone like that, right? They know it all no matter what the facts tell them. And number 8, they make the same mistake over and over again, and they always make excuses and complain. You know, getting back to this idea of best practices, I mentioned to you about the home I grew up in. You know, I also grew up in a home where my parents never taught me about personal finance. Never at all. So when I was in the Navy, I was like 20 years old. I had my first bank account. This is back when people wrote checks. You know, this is back in 1996, back in the dark ages for some of you young kids here. And so here I am stationed up at NAS Whidbey Island. I had no idea of personal finances. I was very dumb. I was very ignorant. I thought, hey man, I got checks in my checkbook. That must mean I got money in the account. And so true story, man, I was bouncing checks all over Oak Harbor. I remember walking into a business and they actually had my check up on the wall with a big sign and there was other people on the wall. It was the wall of shame, you know, with a sign that said, "Don't accept checks from this person." Like, oh man, I've been here before. They know me, Pastor Cerns, they know me. And then I was 21 years old and I flew in a Navy plane to Norfolk, Virginia. We were getting ready to leave on a 6-month deployment to the Persian Gulf, and I'm walking up on the aircraft carrier getting ready to leave, and I had less than $10 to my name. I had a, I've had it moment, right? I said to myself, I said, Tyler, I never want to experience this again, having less than $10 to my name. I said, I never want to experience what it's like walking into a store, seeing a check behind the counter with the sign that says, "Don't take checks from this guy." I remember that experience. No, notice it's the hardships in life. That's what teaches you. That's what gives you that's what gives you grit. And so I made a decision right then that I was going to change my family tree. And I remember on that ship, I wrote down in a journal that I'm going to learn as much as I can about personal finance. And so I spent the last number of years studying personal finance. I went to school to learn about personal finance, about investing and all that good stuff, because I said, I never want to live this way again. You see, here's the reality is if you don't like a certain area of your life, guess what you can do? You can change it, right? Find somebody who is successful in that particular area. If you want to have a better marriage, find a couple who's got a great marriage and say, hey man, what are you doing? If you want to get in shape, don't ask that person who's completely out of shape, what are you doing? They'll tell you what they're doing. They're eating chips and sitting on the couch. Find somebody who's in shape and say, what are you doing, right? That's what we call best practices. If you want to succeed in life, find somebody who is successful in that area and simply copy them. So the question I want you to ask yourself right now is, what do I want to change? What do you want to change in your life? I mean, there's a sense maybe the Holy Spirit speaking to you, or maybe it's through me. You're saying, man, with things you've mentioned already, man, this is exactly what I needed to hear. I mean, the person next to you, they may go home tonight with sore ribs, because you constantly keep elbowing them saying, listen, are you listening? Are you listening? Wait till I do the one on marriage tomorrow. You husbands are going to go home with sore ribs. I'm kidding. As you come out each night, we're going to be on this journey together. And as you come to the presentations, you're going to hear some things that encourage you, but you also may hear some things that challenge you, because you may be experiencing a relationship conflict right now in your life, or maybe your marriage has seen better days. Maybe your mental health is struggling and you're saying, man, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling depressed, I don't know where to go, I don't know what to turn. Am I depressed? What are the symptoms? What are the signs? I don't know. What should I do? I'm going to talk tomorrow very practically about what the next steps are for you or for somebody that you know. But I'm reminded of this verse in the Bible where Paul says in Galatians, he says, do not be deceived, God is not mocked, for whatever a man sows, that he will also what? Now, if you sow good things, you're going to reap good things, but if you sow poor decisions, you're going to reap those poor decisions. In other words, if we put good stuff in, good stuff is going to come out. And so one of the things I want you to choose tonight is I want you to decide right now to pour your life into the things that benefit you. Things like relationships, family, faith. Now I want to touch on social media because you can't talk about mental health without touching on social media. And I'm not opposed to social media per se, but I want you to know that social media is going to work against you in all the major areas of your life. Do you realize that most of what's posted on social media is either fake or it's simply filled with anger? Because what happens is when you go on social media, oh, what happened here? I pushed a button and we went all the way back to the beginning. I'm telling you, I got to go through all this again, you guys. It's the Mac. I made fun of the Mac computer, and now it's getting back at me. Where was I at here? Oh yeah, social media. It's easy to allow other people to dictate your life. I mean, think about it. Why would you want to live up to the expectations of somebody else? But that's what happens on social media. It's fake, it's phony. People, they post things on there with like 12 different filters. And in case you're wondering who these other people are that, their expectations you want to try to live up to, we call those people the Joneses. Now, there was a point in life where when you wanted to keep up with the Joneses, when I was a kid, 30 years ago, if you wanted to keep up with the Joneses and see what they were doing, you had to actually look out your front window of your house and you would see that they have a new car in the driveway. You had to be there in person. Well, now with your phones, I got a new phone today, guys. For the first time, I probably have the most advanced phone of anybody in the room I'm in right now. It feels pretty cool. It's an Android, by the way. I think you guys got an idea of how I feel about these Mac things, right? But we carry the Joneses with us in our pockets, on our phones, everywhere you go. And I tell you, the Joneses, they use 12 different filters, and they're not posting reality. I was on a vacation a year and a half ago. We were in Maui, and in Maui, you take a boat out to this, there's a crater out there, and you can snorkel. I can't remember the name of it, but it's fun for snorkeling. It's a crater right off the coast. You can see it from the island there, from the west coast of Maui. And when we were on the boat going out there was a couple sitting next to us. I didn't know them, but they were arguing. Fighting, on vacation, arguing. And then the captain of the ship gets on. He says, oh, everybody on the port side, which, if you're in the military, the port side is your left side, right? On the port side, he said there were dolphins or a whale. So, of course, everybody starts getting up and getting their cameras because they want to get a picture. This couple that was fighting was sitting right on the very edge of the boat. They're fighting. The announcement's made. They pause. He takes his phone out, puts his arm around her. They smile, take a picture. She says, make sure you tag me in that. And then they go back to fighting. Now think about this. I know their friends saw that picture that day and they said, oh man, look at this couple on vacation. Oh, they're so lucky. They're having so much fun, right? But they don't know what I know. They weren't having fun. You see, we see people living, we see people on social media, our friends, and they're on some vacation. Their kids are at the park, and they're living the life that I want. I mean, their kids are clean, and they got these beautiful matching clothes on, and I'm at home, and there's dishes in the sink, and laundry piled up, and my home is messy, and I'm unorganized, and I'm like, man, how come I can't be like those people that I see online? Maybe I should take a picture of reality and be hashtag blessed, all these dishes in the sink, hashtag blessed. Now, of course, we know everything on social media has been filtered and you're just capturing a brief moment in time, but we see that and we compare ourselves to, we all do it. We compare ourselves to that. But the picture doesn't tell the whole story. Because nobody, most people, they go on vacation, they put it on their credit card, and nobody's going to put a picture of their credit card statement. Hey, just spent $5,000 in Hawaii. Hashtag blessed, right? No one's going to do that. I mean, they'll post pictures of their remodeled kitchen or, look at the new car my husband just bought me, right? But Nobody posts a picture of, look at the car my husband bought me, It's got 250,000 miles on it. Nobody posts a picture that they took out a second mortgage to pay for that remodeled kitchen and say, look, we just took out a second mortgage of $50,000 to pay for this kitchen. Hashtag blessed. We're in debt, like most Americans, I mean, nobody posts reality on social media. And so what I want you to learn is we've got to put those blinders on, right? We've got to put those blinders on and stop focusing on what everybody else is doing. Instead, focus on you. Because you are both, here's the good news and the bad news. The bad news is you are your biggest problem. But the good news is you're also your biggest solution. No one's going to fight for you harder than you. And so I want to encourage you, as you come out to these presentations, make sure you're filling in the answers. Make sure you're writing little notes. There may be things I say that really speak to your heart, and make sure you're writing those things down in the blank marks on your lesson guide. And make sure, we're going to break up here in a few moments, that you take some time. This first life group is going to be very, very simple to go through. We're going to break up here in a minute. But this seminar, this is about you. It's about you improving the major areas of your life. I love this quote here by Dr. King. He says this, he says, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to what? Keep moving forward. Even if you're taking a baby step, keep moving forward. Even if you want to get into better shape and you say, you know what, tonight I'm going to do 20 push-ups. Keep moving forward. Even if tonight you're going to say, you know what, I haven't been reading the Bible in a while, but tonight I'm going to read a couple of verses. Keep moving forward. Even those little baby steps, even those small little things create habits, like a snowball, begin to get bigger and bigger and bigger. So keep moving forward. This is your life, and you owe it to yourself. Now we're going to take a short break. We're going to take about a 15-minute break here, 10-minute break, probably 10 minutes, because these questions are pretty simple. But there's 3 questions here in your life group. In fact, I'm going to put those questions up on the screen as well. We'll begin with our next topic on how to make smart choices, which is a lot shorter than this first presentation. But there's 3 questions, and so it looks like there's enough people at each group. You're by yourself, sir. You may want to join a group over here, or I think everybody else is pretty 3, 4. So here's the questions you want to share with the people at your table. First, introduce yourself. What is your name? But then share with the group where you were born, what your favorite hobby is, what you hope to gain going through these presentations, and if you were to join some type of follow-up group, like if the church were to do a follow-up small group or a follow-up Bible study or a follow-up health program, what's something that you would like to be a part of? Now make sure everybody at your group gets a chance to share, gets a chance to talk. I know there's always one person who's a real talker, and if that's you, just kind of, check yourself, a little bit, that you like to talk, but you got to hear from other people too. And then on the very back, I'm giving you a homework assignment, all right? A homework assignment. You can do this tonight when you go home or first thing in the morning. I'd recommend you do it tonight. Is I want you to begin to read through the book of Proverbs. Now, Proverbs is in the Bible. It's right after Psalms. It was written by a guy named King Solomon. Jesus said Solomon was the wisest man to have ever lived. There are 31 chapters in Proverbs, and your homework assignment is to start reading just 1 or 2 chapters a day. And then if you're okay writing in your Bible, nothing wrong, there's not a sin to write in your Bible, is I want you to highlight or underline specific things in those chapters that apply to you. So that's your homework assignment, all right? Let's take a break into some of these groups, and then we'll start up again in about 10 minutes, all right? Can we do that? So let's spend about 10 minutes, and as we do that, I'm going to ask the AV guys to go ahead and switch over to the next presentation, if you'd be so kind. There's bathrooms around the corner. There's also some refreshments in the back there. They're going to put a light on. Ooh, look at that. Ta-da! The light's on. There's refreshments. Grab some food. Get your blood sugar going. If you know what, well, watch the line there. But if you want to get up and get some snacks, grab some snacks, bring them back to your table. Eat, drink, be merry while you discuss. And then, of course, during the next presentation, which will be shorter than the first one, you can go back and forth and keep munching away, right? All right, guys, let's take this break. doesn't work. And so I'm going to tell you the one that does work. So if someone ever says, just forgive and forget. No, it doesn't work. Sorry, I've tried it. It doesn't work. But right now, we're going to talk about how to make smart decisions. You know, history, I should mention, you should have lesson guide number 2. It looks just like the first one, except this one probably has no writing on it, assuming you filled out the last one. Now, history is filled with stories of people who have made bad decisions. How many of you have ever made a bad decision or made a choice you wish you could take back? You know, the most important decision in life, both hands, right? The most important decision in life is to make the right decision. Everything that you do in life is dependent on the decisions you make. I mean, one good decision can equal a lifetime of happiness. One bad decision can equal a lifetime of hell on earth. If you could go back and tell your younger self one thing, what they shouldn't do, how many of you would love to do that, right? Go back and just say, whatever you do, don't do this. Or whatever you do, this is what you want to do. Well, history is filled with examples of people who've made bad decisions. For example, the French Emperor Napoleon, he decided to invade Russia in 1812. This was not a very good decision on his part. What about the search engine Excite? Now, some of you are like, what? There was a search? Yep. Back in the 1990s, back in the dark ages, young people, there was a search engine called Excite. And check this out. They turned down the opportunity to purchase Google for less than $1 million. Today, Google is valued at over $1 trillion. How many of you use the search engine Excite? Anybody here? Probably never even heard of it, right? And then, of course, what about Blockbuster Video? There was this new startup called Netflix, and they offered Blockbuster $50 million to help them get this DVD by mail thing going, and Blockbuster said, nah, we're not interested. Well, there's only one Blockbuster left. Did you know there's actually one Blockbuster left? It's down in Bend, Oregon. And it's more of a tourist attraction. I mean, how many of you remember Blockbuster Night? Do you remember that? Again, this was the dark ages, right? Friday night, Saturday night. What did you do with your friends? You asked your parents, let's go to Blockbuster, right? Remember the walls of movies? Well, they turned it down, and today Netflix is worth over $100 billion. Now, this next slide, I got to add a caveat. Now, I'm a Seahawk fan, all right? But I got to add the caveat to this, because if you go back to the 2000 NFL draft, there were 6 quarterbacks drafted before the 7th quarterback, who was picked number 199. He was the 199th person drafted in the 2000 NFL draft, and his name, you all know him as Tom Brady. Think about that. Think about all the teams that passed on Tom Brady. And Tom Brady went on to win more games, throw more touchdowns, win more Super Bowls than all 6 of the quarterbacks drafted before him combined. You see, people, we are a product of the decisions that we make. 90% of people I meet have at least one area in their life that is completely messed up. And the most common areas are like finances, relationships, marriage, moral conduct, health, spiritual life. And 99.9% of the time, they are in the situation they're in because of the decisions that they made. Notice what the Bible says in Proverbs 19. And if you do your homework assignment, in about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, you'll be at Proverbs 19. The Bible says people ruin their lives by their own what? By their own decisions, right? Their own foolishness. And then they're angry at the Lord. I think of that story in Genesis where Adam and Eve, the Bible says they ate the fruit, and God comes down. He's having a conversation with Adam. He says, what did you do? And Adam says, the woman that you gave me, she made me eat of the fruit, right? It's not my fault, God. It's the woman, and well, it's your fault, God, because you're the one that created her. And so again, we find that people are a result of their decisions, and often Unsuccessful people want to blame everybody else for their problems. Yet God has a wonderful plan for each and every one of us. In fact, the Bible tells us, Jesus says in John 10:10, I've come that they might have life and have it more what? Abundantly. The caliber of your life is going to be dependent on the choices that you make. And I want you to learn how to make smart choices in your life. I love this quote by Stephen Covey. He says, your systems, and I'm going to rephrase that, the decisions that you've been making are perfectly designed to get the results that you are what? Getting. Some of you have heard this quote before. I put a little spin on it. The decisions are perfectly designed to get the results that you're getting. You are a product. You are where you're at today because of the decisions that you made. Now again, going back to the first presentation, we can blame 100 people. And yes, there are some people, man, they did not get a fair shake at life. And it breaks my heart. You know, I see homeless people and I drive down to Seattle and to Tacoma and I see people there and I know it's become a political thing, but I try to humanize it. And when I see somebody in that situation, I ask myself, I wonder what kind of life that person had. What kind of family were they born into? You know, did they have mental illness? Did they have a family that supported them, that loved them? Did they have the same opportunities that I had, that you had? I mean, you know, we're a product of the decisions that we make, but the reality is there are some people in life that aren't dealt the same hand that you have been dealt. And so one of the things when it comes to mental health is really try to have empathy for other people. That means be willing to kind of put yourself in their shoes and see the world through their eyes and know that every single person has a story. And everybody that you encounter, even that jerk that cut you off on the freeway, everybody you encounter, they are struggling with at least one area in their life right now. So just kind of keep that in mind. We can blame 100 different things, but at the end of the day, you are both your biggest problem, but you also are your biggest solution. So here's the first question I want you to ask yourself tonight. I want you to ask yourself, where do I want my life to be in 1 year? If you're married, what type of marriage do you want to have in 1 year? When it comes to your personal finances, ask yourself the question, what do I want my finances to look like in 1 year? When it comes to your health, when it comes to your spiritual life, your mental health, what do you want your life to look like in 5 years? What do you want your life to look like in 10 years? Because the decisions that you make today affect where your life is going to be then. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to give yourself, to write yourself a permission slip to make positive changes in your life. Here's what's interesting, what people do. Most people will overestimate what they can do in 1 year, but they underestimate what they can do in 5 years or 10 years. Keep that in mind. People will overestimate what they can do in 1 year, but you underestimate what you can do in 5 years and 10 years. And so let me make this practical. Here's how I do my life, and I've learned this from other people. I have basically two lives. You know, I have Tyler of today, but then I have Tyler in the future. So one of the things I do when I'm making decisions, whether big decisions or small decisions, I always ask myself, can present day Tyler, what I do, will it benefit future Tyler? Does that make sense? And I'm always asking myself, I'm always trying to benefit the future version of me, even in the small things. For example, I exercise. It's not my favorite thing, but it's good for my mental health. And I'm going to talk about that tomorrow, that exercise, having a daily exercise regimen, studies have shown that is just as beneficial as taking medication to combat anxiety and depression. And that's the aerobic type of exercise. But here's what I do. When I go to bed at night, or I should say before I go to bed at night, I want to set myself up, future Tyler, better for tomorrow. So what I'll do is I'll make my lunch in advance and I put it in the fridge. I make my kids' lunches the night before or help them make them, put them in the fridge. But then I take my exercise clothes and I put them out on the ledge in my bathroom next to our tub. I put them right there because in the morning, I want to take away as much friction as possible so it's much easier for future Tyler to not only get ready in the morning, but also make sure I have time to go to the gym. Now, that's just an example of doing something for yourself for tomorrow, But what about a year or 5 years or 10 years? If you want to experience financial freedom and you want to change your family tree, and one of the things I've discovered when it comes to finance is being smart with finance. Here's the incredible thing. It's like 80% behavior and only 20% head knowledge. You see, I always thought when I was younger and I talked about walking on the ship being broke, that to be smart financially, there's these guys that use, there's certain lingo that you learn over time, but literally it's 80% behavior, 20% head knowledge. And so if I want to benefit the future version of myself, if you want to benefit the future version of yourself, instead of sitting on the couch watching The Bachelor, I'm going to get that book by Dave Ramsey, right? Financial Peace Makeover, or whatever that book was called. And man, I'm going to read that book instead, right? I'm going to do things today that'll benefit me tomorrow, next week, a year from now, a month, 5, 10 years, so on and so forth. You see, we live in such a fast-paced world that most people want instant gratification. Most people make decisions in life like a microwave, right? Very quick and without much thought. How many of you like microwave popcorn? Anybody here? Some people do, some don't. Here's the thing about microwave popcorn, and if you eat it, you know this is true. If you leave that popcorn in the microwave just 2 seconds too long, what happens? Not even like a minute, right? If you're like me, you stand there by the microwave, and what are you listening for? Those pops. Because, man, if like 2 seconds go by and you ain't heard a pop, guess what happened? You burned your popcorn. Well, the reality is if you make decisions too quickly in life, you're going to get burned just like that popcorn. And so the bigger the decision, I want you to start thinking like crock pot mentality. Doesn't food taste better out of a crock pot than a microwave, right? So you want to let your thoughts, you want to let it simmer as you weigh the evidence, because what happens is people make the mistake is they move through the decision-making process too quickly and they rely on bad information or from emotions, or they act on a fleeting impulse. In the real estate industry, they call this buyer's remorse. Now, understand that, depending on the decision, depends on how much time you have to make. When I was getting dressed to come here tonight, I didn't put a lot of thought into what socks I was going to wear, I wanted to wear my nice warm wool ones because it's cold outside. But, I had to put a little bit of thought into ironing my shirt and what have you. And, when it comes to driving on the freeway, if that person slams the brakes, you don't spend a lot of time putting thought into, should I hit my brakes too? Or, no. So some things you think very quickly, but when it comes to who am I going to marry? What am I going to study in school, right? What type of profession do I want to go into? Where am I going to live? Am I going to buy this house? Am I going to buy this car? These major life decisions, then you need to spend some time really investing in allowing that process to take place. And I'll walk you through the process, but notice this quote. This is from an anonymous person. It says, unsuccessful people make decisions based on their current situation. Successful people make decisions based on where they what? Want to be. That goes back to that idea. Where do I want to be a week from now? Where do I want to be a year, 5 years, 10 years? Because, to get to that point in your life, it may seem like, man, I'll never get there. But I tell you, every marathon starts off with just taking baby steps. You just keep moving forward. Just keep moving forward. Just keep moving forward. Again, where do you want to find your life in 5 years or 10 years? How can you best benefit the future version of you? Now, I'm reminded of some really incredible decisions that were made. I think of Dr. King. I mean, he made an important decision to fight against hate and segregation. And when you read some history of Dr. King and what he was willing to do and put himself through, it's quite remarkable. Or I think of Rosa Parks, how she was, made that decision. I don't know if she woke up that morning and made that decision, or it was like a spur of the moment thing. She said, you know what? I ain't doing this anymore. I am not giving up my seat. And she made that decision, and it changed, it altered the history as we know it. But as important as these decisions are, I believe the greatest decision that has ever been made is the decision that Jesus made when He chose to take our place on the cross. Jesus made a decision. He chose to take what you deserve and what I deserve, and in exchange, He gave us what He deserves. He was willing to make that switch with us. And so what are some of the steps that need to be made to make smart decisions? Let me first share with you on your first page the major factors that cause people to make poor decisions. So number one is the influence of others. Here's some major things that will cause you to make a poor decision. The influence of others, we call that peer pressure, right? In fact, people are directed by their environment and society rather than being directed by their own decisions. So number one, the influence of others. Number two, time pressure. When you're under the gun, your anxiety rises and we're much more likely to ignore relevant information. This should be on lesson number 2. It should say 2 on the very bottom. You all see number 2 on the bottom? So it might be on a different table. We might have ran out. I apologize if that's the case. So what happens, this is like, and sorry to pick on if you're a car salesman, but salespeople do this. They'll say, hey man, you got to make the decision now, because if you don't make the decision right now, this same deal for this car, it's not going to be available tomorrow. You got to make it now. Let me tell you, if they're willing to give you that offer today, guess what? They'll give it tomorrow, right? And so that's a tactic they're doing, is they're trying to do this time pressure. Now, I like to go to Panera Bread. Anybody else like Panera Bread? I like Panera Bread. And I never order at the counter. I always order at the kiosk. I just think it's easier to order at the kiosk. I put my phone number in. But often when I order at the kiosk, it'll pop up and say, would you like to save $2 on like a pastry? And then it has a countdown clock. 10, 9, 8, 7. You know what they're doing, right? They're time pressure, right? It's like, oh, if I want to save $2, I got to make a decision right away. And I think, if I get that pastry, man, that's like 500 calories. And how many minutes do I have to walk on a treadmill or run to burn those 500 calories? I'm like, I ain't doing it. I'm going to get my drink and I'm going to leave. Number 3 is physical comfort when you're hungry, right? Hot, cold, tired, sick, hangry, they call it. Your decision making is less efficient. Have you ever been grocery shopping when you're hungry? Bad decision. Man, when you're hungry, everything looks good. You're like, oh yeah, canned lettuce, huh? Never had that before, but hey, how bad can it be, right? The other thing is if you just had like a big meal, like sometimes my wife and I, like date night is like, let's go to Fred Meyer's, that's our date to go shopping. We'll go out to eat and then we'll go shopping. And after you've eaten a meal, if you go grocery shopping and you don't have a list, man, it's hard to buy food when you ain't hungry. Like when you're full and you're trying to walk off your meal at like Costco, it's hard to buy things. And so you got to have a list. You got to make smart choices. Number 4 is incomplete information. When choices involve several options without much information, the best choice is often impacted. Now, we all know what it's like to make bad choices. I mean, the world is filled with examples of people who made bad decisions. But what about good decisions? What are the steps that we need to follow if you're going to make good choices? Now, step number 1 is probably the most important. Step number 1, this is on the back or on the next page. Step number 1, very important. Know what you value most in life. This is important when it comes to major decisions. You have to have a list written out. What do you value most in life? Some say I value God if you're religious. Some say I value my spouse. Maybe it's my family, my kids, my grandkids, my siblings, my friends. Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's your job. Maybe it's, I don't know, food. maybe it's money. I don't know what you value most. But you've got to make decisions based on what you value most. Now, most people don't do this. Most people think they know what they value most. What really tells you what people value most is when you get to the very end of life. I've done funerals. I know Pastor Dustin has done funerals. I've sat with people in the family in the final moments, and I'll tell you, what really matters at the very end is God and family, God and relationships. That's what matters at the very end. I've done counseling. I've met with families that they're losing somebody, they're on hospice. I've never had somebody say, Tyler, get me my phone. I want to log into my Schwab account or my Fidelity. I want to log into bank. I want to see one more time how much money I have. Nobody ever does that. But that's how most people live their life, see? You got to know what you value most. Now, if you were to ask me, Tyler, what's your value list look like? Here's what I value most in life, and it's probably very similar to yours. I don't know, but here's mine. Number one is God. On my value list, to me, God is number one. Number two is my wife, LaVon. She's number two. And I hope on her value list, I hope I'm number two, and I hope God is number one. So number one for me is God, my relationship with God. Number two is my wife. Number three are my kids, Nate and Bella. They're number three. They're my why. They're my purpose, my reason. The next one is probably my extended family, and then friends, then my health, and then my job. Even though I work in full-time ministry, I'm able to separate my job, my profession, from my relationship with God. See, meaning if they were to call me tomorrow and say, Tyler, you're fired, sorry, we're at Washington's at will, we're going to let you go. I'd be saddened, but it wouldn't take me away from my relationship with God, because those are separate. And then on the very last on my list is money, is last. Now, here's why it's important to know your value list. I'm going to make this practical. Let's say I were to get a job offer. Let's say, I'm not looking for anything. I'm planning on staying where I'm at as long as I can. I love it. I love the people I work with. I get to hang out with some of the funnest and coolest people on the planet. And I live in the Pacific Northwest. I live on an island up north in the Pacific Northwest. This is just, I don't want to go anywhere else. But let's say I got a job offer. Somebody found me and they said, hey man, we see your resume, we've heard about you. We want you to come work for us, but it's on the East Coast. But we're going to start, your starting salary is going to be $500,000 a year. I've never made that much money in a year, not even close to that. I don't even know what it would be like to make $500,000 a year. I got nothing against making that kind of money. And if you make that kind of money, praise God. As long as you're doing it in an ethical, legal way, praise God. You've got a skill. You should never be embarrassed. If you've got a skill that earns the bucks, never be ashamed of that if you're doing it in an honest way. But here's the catch. You've got to move to the East Coast. We're going to pay you a lot of money, but you're on the East Coast. And you're going to work for a company that produces a product that may go against your religious conviction. But we know you're a religious person, Tyler, so we're going to give you time to pray about it. You know what I would say to them? I would say, I don't need to pray about it. My answer is no. Well, what do you mean? But talk to God about it, right? You're making a decision. Shouldn't you consult it? No, I don't need to consult the Lord. I've already consulted the Lord. I've got my value list. And on that list, money is last. Number one is God. And if I'm producing a product that conflicts with my religious convictions, that's strike one. My wife, I mentioned she's Native American. We live on the Swinomish Reservation. We're like a mile from all of my in-laws. I love my in-laws. I probably see my mother and father-in-law more than my wife sees her own parents. I'm always over there getting food from my mother-in-law because she's a fantastic cook. And my father-in-law is great at barbecuing salmon. Oh my goodness. Oh, so good. I digress. I know how important it is for my wife and kids to live in the community, in their culture. And because my wife and my kids are number 2 and number 3, I don't have to pray about that. Do you see how the value system works, yes or no? And so if you know what you value in life, it'll help you when it comes to making these smart decisions. Let me give you another example. People will work their entire life earning money. They'll retire wealthy, but along the way, they lose their family, they lose their health, and they lose their relationship with God. And the reason is because they weren't making decisions based upon their value list. I mean, people will sacrifice their health in order to get wealth, and then they'll spend all their wealth to try to save their what? Health, right? It's because they've made choices not based upon what they value. And again, I've never seen somebody on their deathbed say, let me see my statement one more time. I just want to know how much money I was able to earn in my lifetime. It's always, Pastor, can you pray with me? Pastor, can you pray with my wife? Can my wife come sit next to me? Where are my kids? I want to see my grandkids one more time. That's usually. And so make decisions in life based upon those relationships. Now, step number 2 is you got to write out and weigh the pros and cons. This is on those major decisions in life. You got to write out your pros and cons, and you have to weigh the importance of each based upon what you value most in life. So, I hope you, for example, I hope you value your health more than money, all right? So if you've got to make a decision, and this decision, yeah, you can make more money, but it's going to jeopardize your health, and you care about your health more than your wealth, then you already should know what kind of decision that you should make. Always choose your health. And I say health, I don't mean just physical health. I also mean one's mental health. Choose that over making money. If you're, if you're making a moral decision, then hold it up against your own personal code of conduct. And also make sure you get a trusted friend or advisor involved. Now, whenever you talk to a friend, and you've got a pros and cons list, well, first you've got written out what you value, then you've got your pros and cons list. When you start talking to a friend, a trusted advisor, never ask the question, what should I do? Because your friend doesn't want to upset you. They're just going to tell you what you want to hear. All right? That's what friends do. Instead of saying, what should I do? Show them the list and say, is there anything on this list that you think I'm missing? Is there something that I haven't thought of? Or maybe there's something I've overlooked. If you're looking at, what direction do you want to go in a career or college? And you write down your value list. What do you value most? Right? If you want to pick a career just because that career makes a lot of money, but you're going to be miserable while you do it, and you know you're going to be miserable, then don't choose that career. Choose something that ultimately is going to make you have a sense of fulfillment at the end of the day, but of course also choose something that's going to, you're going to be able to support your family off of. You want to balance that out. And make sure you get advice from more than one advisor. In fact, the Bible says in Proverbs 15, which you're going to be reading, right? One of your homework assignments. Without counsel, plans go awry, but in the multitude of counselors, they are what? Established. Now, be sure to avoid mental bias by just talking to people that are going to tell you what you want to hear. All right? Talk to people and say, I'm giving you permission to speak the truth. I need a friend. I need someone who's going to tell me the truth. Am I making a bad choice? Step number 3 is consider the decision in the light of your spiritual priorities. And so write out your spiritual priorities and ask how this decision will ultimately ultimately affect your walk with the Lord. If you're a religious person, ask the question, how is this decision going to affect my family and those that are close to me? And something else I'd recommend is spend time going through the book of Proverbs. Now, I know you're already going to do that because that's your homework assignment. But when it comes to making a life choice, whether it's 6 months or a year from now, there's something incredible that happens. Is when you're spending time, and specifically the book of Proverbs, when you're spending time going through that book and you're meditating and you're praying about it, this allows God, through the Holy Spirit, to begin to impress upon your heart and bring thoughts to your mind, things that you hadn't considered. And so there's a plan to making smart choices. Again, the book of Proverbs tells us, in Proverbs 16, a man's heart plans his way, but the Lord does what? Directs his steps. Again, God can speak to you in a way that you just had not noticed. In fact, one of my favorite verses in the Bible is found in the book of Jeremiah. The Bible says, "For I know the thoughts that I have toward you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope." And the Bible continues, "Then you will call upon me and go and pray to me, and I will listen to you, and you will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your" what? With all your heart. I want you to think about this for a moment. The Bible tells us that God thinks about you. God says, "I know the thoughts, I know the plans I have toward you." I mean, think about that for a moment. That the God of the universe, the most powerful being that has ever or will ever exist, He thought of you today. Before you even woke up this morning, guess what? God was thinking about you. And the thoughts God had about you were good thoughts, thoughts of peace. Now, step number 4 is wait several days before finalizing your decision. You want to allow adequate time. I mean, the bigger the decision, the more time you want. Now, this is challenging, especially, like a couple of years ago, if you were looking at buying a house and the real estate industry was hot and you had bidding wars, and it was like the realtor would call you and say, "Hey, if you want this house, you got to decide right now," and you're uncertain and "I'm not quite sure." And, it's a gamble. When you make decisions based upon time pressure, you're really throwing the dice. And so I'd rather be more cautious about making a choice than pulling the trigger and making a bad decision. And finally, step number 5, when you've processed everything, when you've considered your value system, and you've weighed the pros and the cons, and you've sought good counsel, and you've prayed about your decision, and you've given adequate time, and then step number 5 is you got to pull the trigger. You got to make the decision. And, the more information you have, that's key when it comes to making decisions. The one with the most information usually is the one that makes the best choice. Now, if life boils down to making good decisions, you may wonder, well, why is it that I've got a friend or I've got a relative or I've got this coworker, I know somebody, and man, they are always making bad choices? How many of you know somebody like that, right? For some people, it's been so long since they've, had to make a good decision that I think some people just forget what it's like to make a good decision. Or, I think it's time for all of us to start kind of practicing those decision-making muscles. But here's the reality. Most people will go through life like a river. If you've ever been in an airplane and you've ever flown over a river, and if you look down on the river's never straight. The river's always windy. You know what I'm talking about? Kind of snakes back and forth. The reason is because water always follows the path of least resistance. And there are many people, they get stuck in this rut of life where when it comes to making decisions, they always make the decision that's the path of least resistance. And so we've got to learn how to exercise and kind of train our decision-making muscles. The Bible tells us in the book of Galatians, it says, "For whatever a man sows, that he will also reap." You know, that includes making good decisions. That also includes making bad decisions as well. I want to close this second presentation by sharing a story with you about the best decision that I ever made. Now, back in 1990, what was it? It must have been 1999. Now, I didn't grow up, I grew up jumping around the different churches. I mean, my dad was Catholic, my mom went to, evangelical, free, Baptist, just kind of until something in the church was said that she didn't like, and we'd go to another church, and we'd go to that church for 6 months, and if they said something, and then I was very confused on my religious upbringing, so by the time I was a teenager, I was like, man, I want nothing to do with God. And so I joined the military, and I got about as far away from God as you possibly can. I mean, when you think about picture think of a Navy sailor. What's the stereotype of like a Navy sailor? And I guess that could be with other branches of the military too, but when you're 18, 19, 20, I mean you just do anything and everything. And well, in 1999, I found myself living with my girlfriend. We're not married, we're living together, and she and I made a bunch of mistakes, which I'm not going to get into right now, but we're living together, and she's my wife. We're married now, but we had to go through some ups and downs to get to the point where we're at today. Remember, you don't learn grit by a life of ease, right? You got to face the challenges. And my wife and I, we were punk rockers. I know it's hard to picture now because I'm wearing kind of nice clothing, but we were punk rockers. And years ago, there was a place in Seattle called the Rock Candy. It's no longer there. In fact, I don't even know if the building's still there, but it was called the Rock Candy. And it's where concerts, primarily like punk rock shows and stuff, were put on. And so if you've ever seen like videos of like a really like crazy concert where like people get on the stage and they run and like dive off, you know what I'm talking about? Like that was the crowd like we were in. Like now I'm on a stage talking about the Bible, right, and making smart choices. But that was the crowd we ran in. And so it was 1999, and we were living in an apartment up in Oak Harbor, and we drove down to Seattle to the Rock Candy because they were having a punk rock karaoke night. Punk rock karaoke. And the band that was playing is a band, you probably had never heard of them, Rosemary's Billy Goat. And I don't suspect you have Rosemary's Billy Goat in your car, on your phone. But so we go to this concert, and right away there was just something different about this punk rock show because the lead singer came out and he was dressed like Jesus would be dressed. Like think of what Jesus would look like, the long hair, the clothing, and he had a crown of thorn on his head. And right away I knew what the band was doing is they were making fun of Jesus. Now I was not practicing like any type of religion, but I was offended by what I saw because what I learned about Jesus as a kid was he was a pretty incredible person. And of course, then they had the drum set up there, and they had the pentagram. That's the star in the circle was lit on fire. I mean, it was a demonic. And of course, there was a mosh pit down there. And normally I'd be out there with my friends, but for whatever reason, this night I was standing in the very back at this show. And I'm watching this show, and I'm standing next to my girlfriend, and my best friend Eric was next to me, and I'm standing there, and it's loud. And this was like a dirty place. I mean, it was the kind of place where if you had to go to the bathroom, I mean, it was like there's no doors on the stalls. I mean, there was never toilet. I mean, it was just disgusting, all right? You didn't want to go. You went to the bathroom before you went there. If something fell on the ground, it like stayed on the ground. And I'm standing there watching this show, and I'm watching this guy up there, and it's karaoke, so they're singing songs I'm familiar with from other bands, and I'm standing there watching this, and I just didn't feel good about it. And despite how loud the music was, I kid you not, I heard a voice that night, not necessarily audible, but there was a voice in my head, and there was a question, and the question was asked, are you happy with your life? That question popped into my head, are you happy with your life. And it was like all of a sudden I realized I'm not really happy with my life. And I didn't like the scene that I was in. And I wanted to leave. Now, if you know Oak Harbor, it's a good hour and a half at least from Oak Harbor, maybe 2 hours down to Seattle because you got to drive Highway 20 off the island. And I say to my buddy Eric, I say, man, I don't like this. I want to leave. And I said to my girlfriend, LaVon, I said, I don't like this scene. I want to leave. If you want to stay and ride home with Eric, that's cool, but I got to get out of here. And she said, no, I'll leave with you. I said, all right. And so we get in the car. We're now driving up north on I-5. And we barely got to like Linwood. And like tears start coming down my cheeks. I mean, this was not how I saw the night going at all. I was all pumped up to go to the show. I mean, I smoked some stuff before and, took a few things and drank some stuff. And I was like, I'm pumped up. This is going to be a great show. And I leave early and I'm in the car and I'm driving home and like tears are coming down my cheeks. And it's like all of a sudden I realized what a total jerk I had been in my life. Just a jerk, a loser. I was empty. I felt like there had to be more to life because after all, that voice I heard, it said to me, it said, are you happy with your life? And I remember I answered that voice. In my mind, when I heard it say, are you happy with your life? I said, no, not really. And then the next question I heard was this. If you follow me, I've got something I want you to do. And that's when I chose to leave. And I didn't think that was God. I thought maybe it was losing my mind. But once I get in the car and I'm driving north and I begin to, and my girlfriend's like, are you crying? I'm like, yeah, I'm crying. She's like, why are you crying? I said, I don't know why I'm crying. I just feel so empty inside. I feel like there's got to be more to life. There's like this emptiness inside my heart and I can't explain it, but there's like this emptiness in it. And I feel like, I don't know, like maybe God's been talking to me or something, like he's got a plan for my life. Does that sound crazy? And I'm like, am I losing it? And she's like, no, to be honest, I've kind of felt the same thing lately too. And I said, well, I grew up going to church, but I went to Catholic church and all these other different Protestant churches. And she's like, well, I grew up going to the Adventist church. And I said, I never heard of that before. What is that all about? And, we start talking about God on the way home. We get back to our apartment. Little studio apartment in Oak Harbor, outside the Navy base. And there was no pastor, there was like no, evangelist or some church elder. There was nobody there but my girlfriend and I. And I'll never forget the decision I made that night. I didn't own a Bible. I hadn't gone to church for years. But that night, LaVon and I, we knelt down next to our couch. And we prayed. And I'll never forget what I prayed that night. Can I tell you what I prayed that night? I didn't use the big words people use in church? I didn't use those words. The fancy words? I didn't know those words. But I'll never forget what I prayed because this is the best decision I ever made. Here's what I prayed. I said, God, I have absolutely nothing to offer you. But I'll give you my heart if you do something with my life and with LaVon. Is that an important decision to make, yes or no? Let me tell you, that was the best, and I've made that decision every day since then. Now, it wasn't like we, got up and we're like, hey, man, we're like holy saints now, We went out on the balcony and had a cigarette and probably drank something and kept having premarital sex after that, living together. Because here's the incredible thing that I've learned about Jesus, is Jesus invites us to come to Him just like we are. Did you know that? Just like you are, man. He doesn't care how you are. I mean, He cares, don't get me wrong, but He just says, man, come to me the way you are. And over like the next year, God began to do a work in my life, in LaVon's life. We realized, man, we're living together. We shouldn't be living together. This is wrong. But we weren't going to church. So it wasn't like there was like a marriage therapist. Like now I would do counseling with a young couple. Nobody did that with us. Just we decided, you know what? God's been speaking to our hearts. We need to quit having premarital sex. This wasn't like a pastor, just God speaking to us because we wanted to follow God. So she said, well, I get the bed, you're on the couch, Well, wait a minute, And so we separated, For like 3 months, this was the arrangement we had before we got married, We didn't have a lot of money. I bought our wedding rings at the pawn shop outside the Navy base called Rings and Things. Remember those commercials on TVs? Oh, he went to Jared's. Remember those? I always tell my wife, oh, he went to Rings and Things, They've actually done studies, interesting, on marriage, where they've done studies, the more you spend on the wedding ring, actually it decreases the chances that marriage will last. Did you know that? The less you spend on a wedding ring, it increases the odds that marriage is going to last. So hey, guys, keep that in mind when you're going out there shopping, Rings and Things. Pawn shop, baby. I actually lost mine surfing, so it's around my heart, though. My wife knows that. I lost it surfing on the Washington coast, so it's out there somewhere. But that was the best, thankfully it was only like $20, but that was the best decision I ever made. And here's the thing, God's not done yet. I've got things in my life. Remember I said everybody's got one area of their life that they're messed up. I've got things in my life I'm still messed up, guys. And there's things in your life that I know you're working with. But the best decision that you'll ever make is to put Jesus first. Put God first. On your value list, God has to be what? Number one. He's got to be number one. Notice the questions. We're going to go into our life groups here, and I want you to notice your questions. Where are they at here? So, question number 1. Write in order what you value most in life and where you want to improve over the next 12 months. What's your value list? They'll probably look very similar to the people around you, but write that out. Number 2, write down some good decisions that you need to make to improve these areas of your life, right? If you want to improve your relationship with God, what do you got to do? Well, you got to spend time in the Bible. You say, but I don't got time. Let me tell you, just reading 1 chapter a day will benefit you. Don't think you've got to read like an entire book. 1 chapter, 1 verse even, right? Spend time in prayer. Get connected with the church. This is a great one right here, a community church. Number 3, are you willing to start reading 1 to 2 chapters per day from the book of Proverbs? That was your homework from the first lesson. Now notice your homework from this lesson. Mastering your life is not done in an instant. It takes time as we create habits that we know will benefit us. Now is the time to start a new daily habit. When you first wake up each morning, I want you to start each morning thinking about one thing that you're grateful for. One thing. And try to think of something new each day. If you like the journal about it. But wake up tomorrow morning and think of something you're grateful for. Gratitude. Gratitude is so important. Every study on how to improve one's mental health. Gratitude. So what are you grateful for? When you wake up in the morning, it might be, man, I'm glad I got a pillow. Right? Your spouse is next to you snoring. Hey, I'm glad I got somebody next to me. Right? You've got a bathroom, or maybe it's just, you're warm, your house is nice and warm. I'm glad I've got a heater. Instead of just opening up your social media when you first wake up, like some folks do, think about what you're grateful for. It could be silly. You could think it was stupid, but I'm glad I got indoor plumbing. Right? I mean, you've got more technology and you live better than the king of Pharaoh. You ever consider that? He didn't have indoor plumbing, right? You do. So think about things you're grateful for. I'm glad I've got kids. I'm glad I got grandkids. I'm glad I got a job. I'm glad I'm alive today. I'm glad I serve a risen Lord. I'm glad there's a car in the driveway. Yeah, it's not the car I wish I drove, but at least I'm glad I got a car. So that's your homework, to get into the habit. And it helps if you journal these things, but get into the habit of thinking about something you're grateful for each and every day. Hey, let's break up into our life groups for the next 10 minutes, and then we're going to have a closing prayer. And if you want to grab some refreshments, you can do so. But let's break up and let's talk about what do you value most in life. Let's do that right now.
Thank you to Tyler for coming and sharing. What a blessing. And how many of you learned something valuable tonight? Anybody learn something valuable? Oh yeah, we'd love to hear. So just share just really brief takeaways. We don't have time for your life story right now. Maybe later. Maybe later. 5-second takeaways. Just call it out. There's a Bible app. That's a good takeaway. Awesome. You must have had a good discussion. Make good choices. Yes. What else? Read Proverbs. Okay. Yes. Stop social media, or at least put significant boundaries, or take a break, or quit altogether, whatever you need to do. Yep. Put God first. Great reminder, right? Isn't that the easiest thing to know and not do? Don't blame others, right? It's your fault, right? Right? Don't blame others. That's right. Take ownership. That's the first step. Think about God first thing in the morning, right? Talk about getting the day started out right. Excellent. Anyone else? Takeaways? Don't be a river. That's right. Be a fire hose. Let's go. Grit. Bring it. Don't let life happen to you. Happen to life. All right. All right. Anyone else? Takeaways? You're just taken away by that. I see. All right. Anything else? Well, really, really good stuff. I liked, I guess one of my takeaways was just thinking about your value list and the pros and cons for making a big decision, and then asking people, what am I missing for the pros and cons? I like to ask people, what should I do? And that's, how can they advise that? So that was a really good point. Great. Thanks so much for coming this evening. It's been a great experience. And guess what? It's not over. Woohoo, right? Tomorrow, we got more going on. So let me refresh your memory on the day of awesomeness tomorrow, okay? Oh, he's got some slides. Tyler's going to get the slides going for us. Oh, do you want to share these? Why don't you want to share your topics? Okay, Tyler's going to share his topic.
So tomorrow at 10 a.m., you're going to learn about emotional intelligence. It will be one of the most valuable things you are ever going to learn in life. The ABCs of thinking, how to challenge distorted thoughts, how to challenge crooked thinking. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. Very important. And then marriage, right? How to have an emotionally healthy marriage.
And if I heard someone say, I'm not married and I don't plan to be ever again. And guess what? You know people who are. And so you can still be a blessing to them as you're coming alongside and encouraging them. So no matter what space you're in, you can really benefit from this.
And this is for the men out there. I'm going to talk about intimacy tomorrow. And so you want to be here for that, all right? There's a command in the Bible. So usually the men like that part. That's usually when the men all say, amen, preach it, preacher. We'll talk about that tomorrow. It's in the Bible, so we're gonna address it. And it's good for mental health, I'll tell you that. And then right after lunch, it says 1 p.m., but right after lunch, we're going to talk about freedom from depression and anxiety. And then in the afternoon, we're going to talk about learning to forgive and let go. Not forgive and forget, but learning to move on. And I'm going to share some principles, or I guess our friend's going to help out with that as well. And that'll be tomorrow afternoon. Then in the evening.
And then right after that, we're going to do a group activity, have some fun together. We are going to give ourselves permission to laugh and enjoy life together and do some group activities. Then we will have just a worship time, meaningful worship time. Eat some yummy food again for supper, and then have a gym night here. So if you like playing sports or basketball or something like that, bring your appropriate clothing to do so. If you like playing board games or card games, bring your appropriate clothing to do that, or just bring your favorite card game or board game. And anyway, All right. It's time to go. Let's have a prayer together on that note and close out. So thanks so much for coming. Let's pray together. God, you're so awesome. Thank you so much for teaching us your wisdom. And Lord, as we put you first, thank you for the promise that you will guide our steps and open up a new trajectory for our life that maybe we didn't even know was possible. And so, Lord, I just pray that in the midst of this, that this would not just be some new knowledge, not only some new tools, but that this would be some new commitments made to you, and everything that entails, so that we can not only just live our best life now, but that we can live the best life that you have for us right now. Thank you so much. In Jesus' name, amen. We will see you here tomorrow at what time? 10, but don't come late. Come early because we're going to give away more free stuff. All right? So see you here by 10 at the latest. All right. God bless you guys. Have a great night.